Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Breaking Barriers for Women in Technology digital event, hosted by the CMI London Board. My name is Mel, and I'm an event delivery coordinator at CMI, and I'll shortly be handing over to Katie to begin today's session. If you have any questions during the digital event, you can ask them using the live chat box on the right of your screen, and we shall answer as many as we can during the Q&A. Today's session is being recorded, and it will be shared later on today for those who have booked to attend. The event recording will also be available on the CMI website and CMI YouTube channel. Now over to Katie, Andrea, and Irina to begin today's event.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. So, as Mel mentioned, I'm Katie Kelly. I'm the CMI Women Board Member in London. Today, I'm one of the panellists who are talking to you about breaking barriers in tech for women, and as well as sharing my own career journey with you. I'll be joined by Andrea Palmer, who, as well as being a consultant at Infosys, is also the chair of BCS Women's Network. That's the British Computer Society. And finally, Irina Yurkiev, who is also joining us. Irina is a software engineer at KPMG and will be talking to us about her early career in the tech industry as well. So I'll just quickly pass to both of them to say hello before I finish my short introduction.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrea Palmer. I'm the chair of BCS Women, as Katie has already said. I have been in the tech industry since the early 90s, so I've got quite a long history of it with lots of different roles throughout my career, which I think I'm going to talk about shortly.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Irina, and as Katie mentioned, I'm a software engineer. I've been a software engineer for 2 years now, and I'm looking forward to telling you more about my career and my journey into tech and software engineering.
Thank you both. It's great to have you here. This is one of our first CMI events of 2022 and one of our actual first London board event. So really excited to be here with you both. Before I move on to covering some background on the reasons why women are underrepresented in tech career paths, as Mel mentioned, I remind everyone that we'd like this session to be as interactive as possible. We've had several questions submitted beforehand, so thank you for those. But any others that you would like to cover, please pop them in the chat column. And it would be great to know if you're a woman in tech as well. So please also write that down, write what your role is. And of course, everybody that's attending today, we'd love to be introduced to you so we all know who we're speaking to. Thank you. So, before we go into the panelist presentations, I'm just going to hopefully open up everyone's eyes to the women in tech landscape, just by discussing a few stats. So from the picture you can see in front of you, starting when computer technology first emerged during World War II and continuing all the way up to the 1960s, women actually made up most of the computing workforce. However, in modern times, I think most of us would agree that there are many systemic problems that need to be addressed for women to achieve greater equality in technology career paths. These challenges include gaps in STEM degrees, inequality in pay, workplace culture issues, and I'm sure many others. Opportunities in tech begin with education, and there is a big disparity between degrees earned by men and women in STEM degrees, with actually only 18% of bachelor's degrees being awarded to women in computer sciences, 20% in engineering, 39% in physical sciences, 43% in maths, and this is all according to a study done by the National Girls Collaborative Project. Mel, can we just flick on that slide, please? Thank you. Then when we move beyond education and look at the workplace, the outlook doesn't remain optimistic, with women still being really heavily underrepresented in STEM roles, and actually only 19% of the people working in tech in the UK identify as female. However, although not perfect, the stats aren't all completely bleak when it comes to computer science roles in particular. They actually have one of the smallest gaps in pay between male and female professionals, with women actually earning 94% of what men earn. And some reports actually do claim a healthier work-life balance for women in tech startups. So obviously tech isn't a totally unattractive place for women to work. So what other factors in the workplace are impacting the decline of women pursuing careers here? So lack of career progression could be one reason. There are only 1 in 10 women IT leaders. And actually, worse still, despite significant growth in the number of women working in tech and IT roles, female representation in the tech sector has actually stalled in the last year, despite advancements in technology more generally. When we go back to thinking about great role models that we should just talk about all the time to try and inspire younger girls and women into tech more generally, we've got some of them on the screen there. We've got Reshama Sujani, who is the founder of Girls Who Code, Kimberly Bryant, who is the founder of Black Girls Code, and Susan Wojcicki, the YouTube CEO. I may not have pronounced that right. We need to be shouting about these to inspire more women into tech, as well as opening up other doors and busting some misconceptions about women in tech as well. We know that equality is beneficial for all, and this extends to technology companies. So today we will explore how our 3 panelists, myself being one of them, have navigated this, as well as demonstrating the whole host of job opportunities available in tech for those that may be unaware that we will represent on the panel today. So I hope you found those stats interesting, and it's provided some food for thought for questions and comments going forward into the panel discussion. And I'm now going to pass over to Andrea Palmer, who is going to begin the first presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. It's a pleasure to be here working with CMI Women as well today. So thank you for inviting us. So my career in IT has been very varied and actually happened by mistake. I did my first degree in biochemistry and actually was very lucky in that some people had the foresight to actually say, you've studied STEM and you've actually understand how to be analytical, and we think you'll actually make a really good analyst programmer. And that's how I started my career back in the early 90s. So I haven't looked back. I mean, it's taken me to live in India, it's taken me to live in Norway. I've traveled and worked all around Europe. So from doing programming to project management, analysis, and more recently doing business change. So it's been a very varied and fun career. You know, as Katie said, the stats for women in tech are not good. And unfortunately, they haven't changed for the last 20 years. And through BCS Women, I was approached along with 5 other women to write a book last year, which opportunities like that don't happen very often, but the BCS asked if we could actually help to attract more women into tech. And so we've written a book on women in tech, and it's a practical guide to increasing your diversity and inclusion in tech. And there are lots of fantastic jobs, which I think sometimes when we talk about tech can be a little intimidating for some people. But you know, by me talking about the fact that I didn't have a technology background and have had a very successful career, I'm hoping that we can also encourage others to consider it. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. So I'm going to speak a little bit next. I've got a slide with many potentially annoying animations that Mel will click through. But I'm going to take you through my career journey from my studies at the University of Leicester to where I am now at Oaklyn as a technology change manager. And I'll talk more about what that means shortly. Thank you. So when I was at school, and when I say school, sixth form, really, when you start thinking about what you want to do at university and what you want to be when you grow up, I was really interested in doing something in the realms of social work and helping people. So I actually decided to do a degree in criminology at the University of Leicester, which, as you can imagine, apart from a module in cybercrime and actually having to use a computer to write my essays, had little to do with technology. So whilst I was at university, I also supplemented my studies with volunteering and part-time roles, some luckily enough in criminal justice, and of course a few bar jobs scattered in between. I mentored young offenders, and I also worked as a project coordinator at Leicester Prison. So that's what the picture on the screen you can see is. I actually worked at Leicester Prison. That's not an indication of some dark past. And even though at the time I didn't see it as being completely related to technology, my time working in the prison as a project coordinator was probably my first exposure to how technology supports businesses, be it a charity, in this example, operate more efficiently. Then post-graduation, I knew I wanted to continue working in criminal justice. I'd enjoyed it so far. I thought, why change something if it's not broken? And began to explore my options, which was quite difficult, seeing as I graduated in the middle of an economic crisis. I was lucky enough to get accepted onto the technology graduate scheme with the police, the Metropolitan Police in London, which allowed me to remain in the realm of criminal justice and not feel like I totally wasted my degree, but also explore something new, and in this case, IT project delivery. So, of course, going in to the police, not just in IT, but IT in the police as a 21-year-old woman, I often felt that the workplace culture and potentially the impact it could have on my opportunities were compounded. In reality, I didn't see this happen at all. Luckily, that's not the case for everybody. I was given many different opportunities by the nature of the fact it was a development program. I started my career at the police on the IT service desk. So I actually answered the phone to police officers whose radios didn't work and had problems inputting things into the crime recording databases, which was frankly terrifying, having only been working there for a few days. Fake it till you make it definitely came into play there. And my final role in the police involved me operating as the IT project manager on the very long titled Operational Policing Systems Futures program. That was basically trying to replace most of the Met's mission critical applications and put them on the cloud, which was untested at the time. Everything was server based. So it was quite a risky decision and a big deal as a project. So I was very, very lucky to work on that. In a team of 10, I was responsible for producing the project plan, conducting stakeholder engagement, monitoring risks and issues, etc., all of your normal project management activities that you'd undertake as part of an IT delivery. And as I mentioned, I, as part of that, managed a large stakeholder engagement. So facilitated workshops, one-to-ones, briefings with internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, heads of police in international and national police forces, CIOs of police forces, and also assistant commissioners within the MPS, all to obviously assist with requirements gathering and make sure we made the right choice about the product we were going to move to. So the most important thing about what I just said was that the last part around the stakeholder engagement was what I enjoyed the most, which made me realize it was actually the people side of tech that I wanted to move into next. And at the time, there weren't many people-related change opportunities or change management roles available in the police or the public sector as a whole, which is what led me to Accenture, which many of you will have heard of. It's an international professional services firm. I was a change manager responsible for ensuring that tech was implemented and adopted properly by people and customers in their variety of clients, some of which you can see on the screen there. Then, after dabbling in internal change management roles, I led change at Dixons Carphone, not just in tech, but in customer journey, HR, supply chain, and a few other areas as well. I moved to the Financial Services Compensation Scheme as a change partner with a similar role. And then 2 years ago, almost to the day, I landed back in consulting in tech at Oaklyn. So Oaklyn works, if we could just go back. Thank you. Oaklyn works across a number of sectors and organisations, delivering change, not just in tech, but finance, HR, procurement, communications, and I'm sure I've missed off some. But my role to play in all of this is leading change management in tech projects, mainly. And my most recent role is leading an ERP overhaul, essentially, for a methanol producer in the Caribbean. So that's, as you can tell by this slide, depicts my journey. It's not been a straight traditional one by any means. I've stayed on the relative same path, but took lots of side steps in what I wanted to focus on before I've landed at what I believe to be my kind of most enjoyable position so far, and where I'm best suited. So hopefully this demonstrates that technology doesn't have to be one size fits all, or take a very traditional route in data science or computer science, etc., all of which are very prestigious roles, but there are other opportunities available in the tech industry as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to pass to Irina, who is going to talk about her early career experience in tech now.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you also for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here and also to share my career journey, which I think, like Andrea and Katie's, is also quite non-traditional, not quite straightforward. So I think I'll start off first by telling you a little bit about my background, why I decided to go into career in tech. I'll talk about how I got into a career in tech, and then I'll finish off a little bit telling you about my actual career now. So where I am now, how I'm enjoying it, and how I'm finding it to be a software engineer, female software engineer currently. So before I start, I thought I'd quickly just clarify that obviously a career in tech can mean so many things. There's so many different possibilities in technology, as Andrea and Katie have mentioned. When I talk about a career in tech, I'm going to mainly focus on software engineering because that's the career that I've taken and the one that I can kind of speak for. So just bear that in mind when I'm talking about career in tech. So just starting off kind of in terms of my background, I, like Katie, with university, I did a completely non-traditional subject. I actually didn't even do a STEM subject, so I didn't do science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. I actually studied geography at university, so I really enjoyed geography at school, and I decided I wanted to do a university, learn about things like migration, demographics, climate change, and so yeah, that's the subject I studied at university. And then after university, like I think maybe some of you here, I, again, had no idea what I wanted to do in terms of my career and my job. And so I thought what would be the best thing would be to actually try different careers, so try different roles. And so I applied for a job in consulting, and I spent around 2 years and 3 months in consulting. I tried different roles within consulting. So I tried more client-facing roles in consulting. I also tried more technical roles in consulting. And that's when I really started to realize that actually the technical career path is one that I would like to kind of pursue and that I enjoyed the most. In particular, when I was a consultant, I worked on integrations between different systems, and I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed how logical, how mathematical, like there was a problem-solving aspect. I enjoyed all of that. And so that's why I kind of wanted to go into tech. I knew I wanted to go into tech. And then the question was kind of how to get it there, because I was in consulting, but I knew I wanted to go into more of a technical career path. So I started to actually explore different ways, and I'm sure maybe some of you may know there's just so much out there. There's so many different ways to actually get into a career in tech, and then specifically into software engineering. There's a lot of resources out there in terms of coding websites, in terms of like blogs people have written how they got into a job in software engineering. There's master's courses, just so much out there. And I think I spent I would say probably up to even a year, just like researching what are the different ways I can become a software engineer. And luckily I had an amazing opportunity within the company that I work for, where there was an opportunity to actually do an apprenticeship. So one day I basically just got an email through from the department, which was an email that was just saying that there's a lot of demand for software engineers, and internally they were looking for someone to reskill someone to become a software engineer. And to be honest, I hadn't heard of apprenticeships as much before. I think there's a little bit of a misconception about apprenticeships being mainly for people who are coming out of school, who are not going to university, doing the apprenticeships. But actually, in fact, now apprenticeships are a very, very popular option, and a lot of big companies, not just the company that I work for, but also like Google, Facebook, they all do these apprenticeships for example, software engineering and other roles. And usually they're only, well, the one that I did was 1 year long. They're often quite short, and they're just focused on accelerating your development, and they're focusing on really the foundations of what you need to go into a role. So I decided that I wanted to do the software engineering apprenticeship. The software engineering apprenticeship was actually with the British Computing Society, and it was 1 year long, and it consisted of a 3-month coding bootcamp, and then 9 months on the job being a software engineer in the company that you originally kind of worked for. So I applied for it, and then did a couple interviews, coding challenges to get into it. And then that's how I got into software engineering. I was able to, through the apprenticeship, move from consulting into the software engineering team. I would say I absolutely loved the apprenticeship in general. I spent 3 months full-time in a coding bootcamp. And in that coding bootcamp, there were people from all different backgrounds, all different companies. So I was there from KPMG, but then there were also people from companies like Deliveroo, Credit Suisse, Civil Service, Deloitte, Accenture. All of them were different ages. Some were 18, some were in their 40s and the 50s. Some had managerial positions previously. Some had been out of work for a long time and were just looking to get back into work, and this was an option. So it was honestly such a great experience just to be able to kind of see that I wasn't the only one that was kind of making this change. And actually there were so many people who were in the same position. They wanted to reskill, and there was an option to reskill like that. So I really enjoyed the bootcamp. And then after the bootcamp, I spent 9 months back in the office, basically back at KPMG, putting into practice what I learned, but also building up a portfolio of projects that I worked on, and then also doing a couple exams and things like that. So yes, that's what it has taken me to where I am now. So it's been 1 year since the apprenticeship, and I'm a full-time software engineer in the team. So in terms of my role, I work both on the front end and on the back end. Primarily, I've had most of the experience on the front end as a software engineer. I'm really enjoying being a software engineer. I think one of the greatest things about being a software engineer is the fact that I feel like every day I learn something new every day, whether it's I'm fixing a bug or doing a new feature. There's always something that I have to research that's new to me. So I feel at the end of each day, I feel like there's something new that I've learned. So I'm really enjoying that. I also feel like I'm surrounded by colleagues who, again, like Andrea and Katie, have come from kind of non-traditional backgrounds. So I work at the moment with some colleagues who were professional musicians or who were before in academia, and they also have reskilled and actually become software engineers. So I'm really enjoying kind of being surrounded by people who have different ideas, who have different backgrounds. I think reflecting back on my journey and maybe like in terms of takeaways, I would say that the most important thing that I learned is that at the moment, there's just so many opportunities to go into technology, especially obviously I can only speak for software engineering, but there's so many resources out there, and there's so many different routes you can take. There's definitely, if you want to teach yourself to code and also apply for a job like that, you can definitely do that. So I guess my main kind of message here is I think it's really never too late to start a career in tech. If it's something that you're interested in, definitely there has never been a better time, I think, just to do a career in tech. So I hope this can inspire some of you, maybe if you are interested in a career in tech. And if you have any questions at all, obviously, feel free to also send me an email or anything. Yeah.
Thank you very much. What a brilliant reflection on what you enjoy, especially about your role now, Irina. So looking forward to digging into that, and Andrea's as well in the Q&A. So we've got some questions that have been pre-submitted that we're going to start tackling, and we've had some awesome ones come up in the chat as we've been presenting as well, and some really lovely feedback too. Elizabeth, I agree. I think that your project sounds amazing, and Andrea, she said she's going to check out your book as well. So it would be great to hear what you think of that. The first question I'm going to pose to Andrea, I think, at this point, if we here. So Andrea, so we've got a question from Adeline, which was submitted as part of the sign-up process. As a business transformation professional, as you are, with enough technical aptitude to talk about code, but not code, I find myself still needing to use humour, patience, taking the high road, as male counterparts and male tech leads sometimes don't talk to me as they should. Whilst effective, sometimes it can be frustrating. Are there other techniques that you have used that are more time effective?
Well, thank you very much, Lena, for your question. I know that lots of women will be facing a very similar situation. And I can say that there was one particular situation when I was working out in India where I was there to look after all the site managers, the applications, and the quants leads. But I was supposed to work closely with the operations manager who led all the developers, but he didn't want to talk to me. So very similar to what you're going through, and it was really frustrating because that was part of my role, was to bring the two parts of the organization together. And what I found actually was most effective was actually finding an individual who was an ally of the person that I wanted to work with. And I was lucky enough that I'd actually worked with this individual prior to moving out to India, so they knew what I was capable of, and they actually were there championing me through the back. So it's about learning to influence through others. So whilst there may be people who are unfortunately are being chauvinistic and not looking after you properly and treating you with the respect that you deserve, sometimes we have to find other ways. And I found that actually influencing through others can have a really profound effect on people, because sometimes people get lost in their own heads and their own preconceptions, and sometimes people aren't even aware that they're causing that impact on you as an individual. So it's also about saying to someone, hang on a minute, or asking, like if you're going to a meeting and you've been planning and you've got something to say, find someone who will champion you, that the individuals will talk to and say, but I know that Adeline has got some points that she wants to raise, so that you find a way to get your voice into the room. I think that's also really important.
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, and just to build on that slightly, I love that advice as well about seeking out an ally. That's a good piece of advice for so many situations, regardless of whether or not someone might not be treating you as you should as a woman in tech. Really, really good piece of advice. Thank you.
And it's not always you that's at fault. Please, women generally, and I had it with one of my team today, apologizing for something, and I said, you don't need to apologize for everything. We all do it, me included, but sometimes you've got to realize that it's not always you that's at fault.
Exactly, and that kind of plays into my 2 cents that I'll add on to your really good answer. But being in the same boat as you, Andrea, and being in business transformation as well, I'll admit I'm no expert coder. I've been doing this job for about 12 years now, so I've got a fair amount of know-how in what happens behind the scenes, regardless of whether I would be able to do it myself. That's why I have chosen to be a change manager. But people are always going to be quite precious about their subject matter of choice, I find. People are proud of what they do. I'm certainly precious about change management. So you're probably more likely to question someone's expertise in an area that you do day in, day out. Definitely not fair if you're only questioning that because of someone's gender. And I have practiced some of the tactics that Adeline mentioned, using humour and not trying to get too frustrated and be impatient. I think I've stopped doing that more recently, especially over the last few years. There's no need to get angry at people. You need to understand why they've got preconceived misconceptions about your skills, etc. But I've always found that the longer game works, that it's in the output once you've proven that you do actually know what you're talking about. This is a longer game, as I mentioned. It would be great if everybody was open-minded straight away and just took what someone was good at, as it is said kind of on paper at the start. It would be a lot easier for everyone. But proving that you do know your stuff, and if you've got an ally with that person or in that space, as Andrea mentioned as well, even better. So that was my just addition to your answer as well.
And you probably do have an ally, because you wouldn't have got the role without having an ally in there in the first
True.
place. So
True.
start there if you're not quite sure where to start.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Exactly. You're not there by accident. Thank you. Then the next question, I am going to go to Irina. So what do you think can be done more in schools or education generally to inspire and encourage more young women into the tech sector?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really, really good question, and one that is definitely certainly discussed quite often now in the media and everywhere, because everyone realizes that it does really start in school. And in fact, a lot of research shows that women that choose to study computer science at university do it because they had the early exposure in school. And so really starting in school really is the most important. So in my opinion, it's actually three things that probably kind of make the most difference. One is definitely changing the curriculum and broadening the curriculum to include computer science or IT. I know certainly for me, I didn't have IT or computer science as an option. I didn't really know what coding was even in school. So definitely, I think including that makes a big difference. And I know definitely there's been a lot of positive change in that aspect. I know that friends who are teachers, for example, they've mentioned they started doing coding in their curriculum. So there's definitely been a lot of change in that area. So curriculum is definitely number one. I think the other thing is definitely having the role models. So having someone to look up to, whether that's a female YouTuber or a gamer online, or whether that's someone that comes into school and actually does after school robotics or coding classes or anything like that. And then the third thing I would say is just information and kind of dispelling some of the myths that are around computing. I think very often there's definitely a myth and like kind of misconception that it's mainly for guys and it's not very girly, or that, I don't know, software engineers, for example, just code in dark rooms. So I think dispelling the myths is important, and also just to get also employers to come in, if possible, into schools, like to talk about career in tech and how there's a lot of demand for actually technology, and really what a career in technology actually looks like.
Thank you very much.
Can I just add a couple of things to that? So for me, the other part is that there's some evidence out there that shows that if a school child is invited into an organization to look around and meet some of the role models and people like Irina who are doing the coding, that they start to believe that that's possible and that they can achieve it. And I think, building those relationships early on is really important.
Yeah, completely agree. Seeing someone that is like you, that's gone on to do something that you're more likely to aspire to do it. I've started doing some talks back at my secondary school as well, about what a career in consulting is, because it's at that age, especially for me, it was anyway, a bit of a vague concept. What does being a consultant mean? And going in and actually explaining to them kind of, I came here and I've been in the same classrooms as you and I'm from the same town as you, does open up people's eyes to the fact that they are more likely to aspire to kind of go into a career in tech or consulting as a result. So yeah, big advocate of the role model position there. Thank you very much, both. I'll kick off on this question. This one was from Jacinth. How useful are HR quotas for women in tech at the recruitment stage to reduce the gender imbalance? And just start off, I am no HR expert by any means, so I'm going to use kind of my own thoughts on recruitment processes that I've been through and that I know of at the moment. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons why certain groups are underrepresented in workplaces, and there's a number of initiatives trying to tackle, and we've still got so far to go. But there's so many points in someone's career that employers have a chance to rebalance the gender inequality. and recruitment is definitely one of them. We know that traditional recruitment practices can sometimes contain bias, unfortunately. So I'd say that putting quotas into HR processes in the recruitment phase is probably a good thing. We need to have open minds when it comes to employing a diverse set of people. That's better for the world, it's better for companies, it's better for their colleagues, etc. So I would say, yes, that is a positive thing, but it's only a short-term fix as such. That's at one point in someone's career. That's when they enter a career. But we also need to tackle gender imbalance from the point of actually promoting people through, giving women good work-life balance opportunities, making sure they've got role models in senior IT positions to look up to, and actually continuing to tackle that gender imbalance as you go through, not just HR quota, recruitment quota, right at the beginning, getting more women into tech. We need to keep them there, I think, is the more important part. So I'd say yes, but it's just solving a small part of the problem, essentially. I don't know if either of you have anything to pick up on that.
Well, one of the things about having quotas is that when you have a target or a goal for trying to address the balance, is that whatever gets measured, gets measured, and therefore is more likely to happen. What we've done in the past in organisations that I've worked in is also to ensure that when you're actually recruiting, that you actually interview a diverse group of individuals. So sometimes we have to be actually tough with the recruitment agencies, because they quite often say, well, I've only got male candidates. Well, that's not good enough in this day and age, and that they need to go out and help you find female candidates. And in the past we've said, I know some companies will say, I need a 50-50 split. If you don't do that when you submit your candidates, then we won't interview anyone from your pool. It's about actually being tough with those quotas when you're coming in.
Thank you. Irina, how did you find going on to recruitment processes anyway, and being earlier in your career and maybe one of the first recruitment processes you've been in? Did you feel like you experienced any bias, or it was more difficult to enter the pool in the first place?
Not at all. I think, and actually the opposite. I think, especially with when I did the apprenticeship, and as part of the coding bootcamp, I was actually really surprised that actually I would even say there were more probably women in my cohort than there were men. So I think that I think there's a lot of positive change that's being done around there. I know certainly in where I work now, there's also quite a lot of women in terms of like women who've come in, also with similar backgrounds to me. So I think. I think there's been a lot of positive change in that in there with the HR quotas as well. Yeah.
Good to hear. Thank you. Then this one. So I think this was from Dennis potentially. Women have left the workforce in droves as part of the Great Resignation. How do we attract women into technology if the pool of candidates has shrunk so much already? And I'll go to Andrea if you've got to comment on that, please.
So yes, COVID has seen a lot of women resigning as a result of the pandemic, but unfortunately it's also seen a huge number of women being made redundant as a result of the pandemic. So I think there's an onus also on the people who are accepting the redundancies not to always accept them and see what you can do. And that then leads on to one of the actions that people can take is looking at your what I call equitable practices, to make sure that your employees are engaged properly, that they've got equal rights in all their packages. It's not just about maternity leave, it's also about paternity leave. All of those different aspects are really important. And thinking, in the past, there's so much about, unless you're visible, then you're not working. And I think that causes so many problems, and that we need to also have flexibility about working times and enable people to work and say, right, these are your core hours. But actually, if you need to take 2 hours off in the afternoon to collect the kids and get them, their tea ready or whatever, that you'll be back online. And as long as people know what you're doing and when you're available, I think all of these little things will make a big difference. You can't do it all, but you need to have a lot more flexibility in the way that we work. It's not a 9 to 5 anymore.
For sure. Thank you very much. We've had an interesting point in the chat, which was kind of a more broad question, which was from Elizabeth. Do you know any techniques to try and help build confidence in women and their work? I found generally men have a lot more self-confidence in their work, even though it sometimes might be wrong. And I'm sure as women panelists and everybody on the webinar as well and commenting in the chat box has their own mechanisms for projecting confidence. And in past CMI webinars, we've been lucky enough to hear from a whole host of amazing female speakers, one that project confidence just by being on these panels. So that's a first anyway. And we've had people that have released amazing books and contributed to other writing that talk specifically about confidence. And one of them is Antoinette Dale Henderson, who is a regular speaker at CMI Women webinars. And you need to read her book. It's absolutely amazing. It gives so many practical hints and tips about how to lead with gravitas when it might not come naturally to you. And as well as a whole host of things that she mentions in the book, some particular ones that I took out of that. And I actually spoke to an entrepreneur called Jodie Cook the other day about something similar, was you're more confident when you know your subject matter, when you know what you're truly passionate about and you're well versed to give that message. I think that I've personally so many times tried to act confident in a subject matter that's not what I enjoy and not what I know about and not where I can add most value. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to try, but that's what I try and arm myself with. I'm confident about what I know and I voice that confidence and I make people aware of my subject matter expertise and make sure that they understand why I'm in the room. So I'm not just there trying to act confident in lots of different subjects. I know what I'm good at and I voice that. And that often, just generally for me anyway, builds my confidence in other areas because I've made it clear what I'm there to give. So that's one thing that I would say I've taken away myself from reading many things and own experiences. And also another one that we've talked about today, mentorship, especially earlier on in my career, having a backer and a role model and a sponsor that you can look up to that can build your confidence and say you are good in that area and you do know what you're talking about and you don't have to doubt yourself there. It's often people that aren't ourselves saying that give you the confidence that you need to enter a room and actually demonstrate expertise in a certain area. But as I said, it's very unique, I think, to personalities, and people take on that in different ways. So I don't know whether Andrea or Irina, you've got any of your own techniques that you use to build your own confidence, or others as well.
So, Irina, I didn't know if you have anything in particular, but I think it is about practicing. I think that's the thing that I have found, and talk, even like today, talking it's not something that I'm an introvert, so for me talking to an audience is quite daunting. But I think the important part is if you don't do it, you can't get over those nerves, and the importance is to keep trying. And I think we don't always want to try those things in the workplace, because when we're in the workplace, this can be deemed as how you're performing, but also can then impact how others in the workplace view you. But the opportunities that CMI Women and BCS Women and other voluntary organisations give you the opportunity to try these things, so that you can take those skills then back into the workplace. And I think that's the really important part, because you can guarantee, in the old days when we used to go to events, there would be a lot of what I call wallflowers of people who were were not confident to go and talk or join a group. But actually, if you're there on a wall and you talk to someone next to you, just start by doing one-on-one, because invariably there's someone thinking exactly the same thoughts as you are.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with the same. I think it's so important to like constantly push yourself out of the comfort zone, and that's how you actually grow the confidence. Because if you're able to push yourself once, you can go out there and do it more and more times, and you just that then becomes your comfort zone, and then something else is your outside your comfort zone. So it really is just. I think it's such a great tip, Andrea.
Thank you both. I'm also loving in the comments, there's lots of discussion around apologising too much. And weirdly, before we actually started the official webinar, we had a discussion about this between us, I think maybe because one of us had apologised a number of times for something that we shouldn't have apologised for. So not too much more comment on that, but I'm really enjoying that. I'm so intrigued into the linguistics of being a woman, and I've read some really interesting books about it, and over apologizing is one of those facets that it speaks about a lot. So really good to hear that people are noticing about that. It's definitely something I do too much. So when I listen to this webinar back, I'll count how many times I've done that. The next question that we have got, bear with me. So I'm going to start with Andrea potentially, and I've got some thoughts as well, and I'm sure Irina and others in the chat column have too. It's quite a simple one. Do many roles in tech offer education to women over 40? So are there any barriers the later on in your career there are if you want to develop your tech skills?
So I would say that some organizations are not doing it, but if you look at the skills gaps, there's a lot of roles that need some additional education. And for me, it's not just the over 40s, it's the over 50s, and it's about reskilling, because the roles that were around even 5-10 years ago, a lot of those don't exist and certainly won't exist in 10 years' time. So if organizations are going to benefit, they need to actually start looking at educating that not just the women, but all people over 40, because digital skills are the way forward. There isn't a role really out there that doesn't have any sort of digital element to the majority of roles I'm talking in tech. And so I would encourage it. And that's one of the things we're going to be doing this starting next month with BCS Women, is looking to run some taster sessions on what you can do for sort of early careers people, but also the over 50s and returners to work, to look at how you can look at new ways to upskill yourself. And whilst we do those things as from a voluntary point of view, I do believe that organisations need to start doing that and looking ahead to see, because the cost of recruitment is enormous, and to find someone who fits your thing is a fraction of what you would have to pay to upskill someone. And bear in mind, these individuals would have been with your organisation for at least 5 years, so they've shown some form of loyalty. They understand how you operate. Recruiting and bringing someone new, quite often it takes 6 months before they're productive. And so, if you upskill, people are likely to want to stay and do it. So I would encourage organisations to start spending some money educating people and reskilling them.
Yes, yeah, thank you for that. I completely agree, and it's very much dependent on organisations. I've been in some organisations that want to develop you and throw lots of different opportunities for development at you, and it's up to you to work through that minefield as to what will benefit you, what you're interested in, and what you think will benefit the company. And then some on the other end of the scale that haven't been willing to invest in education development, no matter what point in their career somebody is.
But
sorry, Andrea.
No, I was just going to say, but it doesn't always have to cost money.
True. Yeah.
So it may be time. So
Exactly.
you could do something like Irina's done with her software development, where she's been on these boot camps. Quite things like software development and data scientists. Those apprentices are sponsored by the government because there is a skill shortage. So maybe your organisation can help do that. There's things like Coursera and LinkedIn and FutureLearn and all sorts of lots of places where people can gain formal qualifications without actually spending a lot of money. And you could actually just encourage your staff to say take 2 hours on a Friday afternoon to self-study.
Yes, of course. Yeah. And like my current organization is brilliant at doing that. Like as a consulting organization, time is our most valuable asset of our people. So yeah, that needs to be managed very carefully. And they often try and do it in bite-sized chunks and encourage people to focus on what's going to develop them and help them reach their career trajectory. I know that lots of companies will probably ask you to even create a mini business case when it comes to, I would like to learn to better myself, to better you as a company and make you more money eventually. You have to try and persuade them that you want to do that. Unfortunately, that is the way of the world. So that's what my advice would be if anybody is coming up against any barriers where they would like to learn new tech skills. It surprises me that any company would think that isn't a viable option and is going to benefit. Obviously, tech impacts everything that everybody does now, workplace or not. But come up with some key points around how that fits in with your career path and how that links into the strategy and vision of the company. I find that makes it harder for organizations to say no when considering learning opportunities.
Yeah, I would just add that, I think I mentioned when I did the apprenticeship, that is one possibility, definitely, because I met a lot of people who were in over 40s. I know this is maybe more specific to software engineering, but I think, as Andrea mentioned, that can also be, there's also opportunities in data science and a few other fields, like maybe even UX design, depending on what you're interested in. But certainly in software engineering, for example, the apprenticeship that I did, I was getting paid at the same time by the company that I was employed with whilst I was doing the coding bootcamp and whilst I was doing the apprenticeship. But there's so many other ways around it as well, like actually you paying for the coding bootcamp, but then you have a guarantee. A lot of these coding bootcamps also can guarantee that you get a job straight after it. Or there's obviously master's conversion courses if you want to go back into education, or just self-teaching yourself. Like I know Katie mentioned about also getting it from your employer, like asking your employer to make a business case, but also you could do it in your free time, actually teaching yourself how to, in software engineering is definitely for how to code or how to design websites. And then, there's definitely opportunities in that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's the age-old cases that not everybody has the same amount of time to invest their own time. During the pandemic, I definitely did lots of self-teaching. That time seems to all have disappeared now the world's opened up. But carving out that time and making good habits where you can is definitely a good ambition when it comes to learning, for sure. Then, Irina, I'm going to go back to you for this one, if you don't mind, please. This is from Aishita, and she asks, how does someone with no tech experience start their career in tech? And what skills would you say are required to do well in tech, which aligns well with some of the questions we've also had in the chat about skills when you're starting your career in tech?
Yeah, I think this obviously definitely depends on the type of career in tech that you're looking for. As I said, I can only speak for software engineering, and I've kind of mentioned this in the past, but with software engineering, I think there's just a lot of different ways you can actually get into it. I mentioned obviously the apprenticeship that I did, coding boot camps, self-teaching yourself. So at the moment, there's just a lot of content, whether that's blogs of people who got jobs and how they actually they provide a curriculum that they followed to get a job in software engineering. Or there's YouTube videos where people mention software engineers who have been software engineers for a long time, where they mention how they would teach themselves to code if they were to start all over again. So it's just a lot of material out there, definitely, if you want to kind of teach yourself. Obviously, as I mentioned, also there's master conversion programs for IT. So that's become extremely popular right now, where you can do a master's in computer science and you don't have to have any bachelor's in computer science. And then equally, there's also work opportunities as well. So I know, for example, at KPMG, we do graduate schemes where you don't need to have you don't need to have a tech background, and you can actually apply to be a software engineer directly, or you can kind of move internally as well and not have the experience. So there's many different ways to basically get into a career in software engineering. Sorry, I can only speak for early software engineering. In terms of the skills that are required, again, depends on the job that you're looking for. I would say it varies, on the job that you're looking for, but I think the best kind of way to tell which skills are required is to look at your dream job description and have a look at the skills that they ask for. I think it's really important to bear in mind that whatever you're doing now, you definitely will have some transferable skills that you can already use. And the other thing to bear in mind is you never have to meet 100% of the criteria. I know that's like a big thing that a lot of women think, that you have to meet 100% of all of the job description, but really you don't. You only need one or two. And I definitely have heard of women getting jobs that have only met a couple points in the kind of job description in the requirements. So I would probably advise you to do that. I know it's something that my mentor recommended to me. She recommended me to actually look into my dream job role and actually look at what is it that I need to learn. And that's how I also did a bit of outside studying as well, just to upskill a little bit more in addition to the apprenticeship.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't what you said, create barriers for yourself, which actually leads me nicely on to a question from Carlos Simpson. And I'll go to Andrea to start with. Do women in tech create barriers for themselves to close the gap and change old perceptions?
Sometimes, but not always. I think it's very easy to create barriers for yourself, and it is sometimes it's being brave and going, actually, this is something I want to do. And I think when it, as Irina said, when it's something that you really want to do, you can break through those barriers. It's a lot easier. And if you can't break through some of those barriers, maybe there's a reason that you're not breaking through, is because it's not really what you want to do. I think you have to have some passion about it, and make you actually want to do it. I think having a growth mindset is really important about learning and learning to evolve, because things aren't staying still. But do we create the barriers ourselves? I don't think it's all of us. As there is a lot of unconscious bias out there that is impacting people about how people behave, and and I don't think guys generally are doing it to say, well, I don't want Katie or Irina to have that job. But it's inbuilt, those unconscious biases, where 9 times out of 10 they will choose someone who looks like them, which quite often is a white male, and that's part of the problem. So I don't think it's not us as women creating the barriers. I think we need to be aware of that, and not necessarily to start blaming ourselves that it's us again.
Exactly.
I think it's something that we have to do together. It's not, it's like having a, obviously I work for BCS Women, but it's not, or volunteer for them, but it's not just about women. We need men to work alongside us to actually make the difference and to break down those barriers. As women, we all know what some of the challenges that we face, but so if we just talk amongst ourselves, then the guys aren't going to get to know. So it's actually something we need to do together, not in isolation.
Exactly, completely agree. And what you talked there about kind of inbuilt unconscious bias. So no, I do not agree that women create barriers for themselves. We're conditioned to potentially think we can't go as far as we can. And that's we could have a whole series of webinars just on that topic. But completely behind your point, Andrea, about we can't break down those barriers ourselves. We haven't built them. The world's built them. Workplaces have built them, unfortunately. And we should all be working towards making kind of workplaces, organizations, and the world better by breaking those down. And that can't just be done by us talking in a vacuum. It needs to be done by workplaces as a whole, for sure. Thank you very much. So we've come to the end of the hour. First of all, I just want to say such a massive thank you, one, to all of our guests, and also happy birthday, Sarah. I've seen loads of people commenting happy birthday, Sarah. So once someone has attended the webinar on her birthday or is going to be her birthday this week, I hope you enjoyed it. A nice early birthday present, hopefully. So thank you so much for being so engaged and asking such good questions. And thank you so much, Andrea and Irina. You've been amazing panelists, and it's been really good to hear about your experiences. So I'll pass back to Mel now, who's just going to leave a few closing comments. Thank you.
Perfect. So unfortunately, that is it for today's session. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and thank you to Katie and Andrea and Irina again for your insights and expertise around the topic. Don't forget, if you're a member of CMI, you can log into Management Direct using the link in the live chat, where you can find a wide range of exclusive and practical development resources and much more. If you're not yet a CMI member or subscriber, you can join our community via the link that's also in the live chat, where you can gain full access to our Management Direct portal. You can also sign up to the free CMI's newsletter for the latest trends and tips for managers and leaders. Please also do take a few moments to let us know your thoughts on today's event by completing the evaluation form. The link is also in the live chat. So thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks all.